All right, welcome everyone. Let's get started. A very warm welcome to all of our viewers joining us online. This, of course, is the Al-Attiyah Foundation Pavilion at COP28 here in Dubai. Our panel session this morning is entitled Emerging Trends in Hydrogen Production and Deployment. My name is Axel Threlfall. I'm editor-at-large at Reuters, based out of London, and I'm thrilled to be hosting yet another of these Al-Attiyah sessions, and I will introduce our panel in just a moment. So hydrogen delivery is our topic. A lot of talk, it seems, this year on technologies. Our three experts will examine the practical problems associated in particular with using hydrogen as a fuel and the strategies that countries can adopt for hydrogen to play its part in the transition to a low emission economy. So let me stop talking there and introduce our panel. Next to me here is Nimia El-Bashir, engineering professor and the director of Engineering Experiment Station Gas and Fuels Research Center at Texas A&M University at Qatar. Next to Nimia is David Hart, visiting a professor at the Faculty of Natural Sciences at the Centre for Environmental Policy, Imperial College London, also at the ERM, the Environmental Resources Management Consultancy. And on the end is Coleman Hans, the Sustainable Energy Manager at the Al-Attiyah Foundation, who has responsibility for putting together the whole of the COP28 program of events. So welcome to all of you. And Coleman, let me kick it off with you just for a context piece, if you like. Just tell us a little bit about the work that the foundation is doing in this space.
Yeah, so as you know, we're a member-driven organization. So we try and do as much research on behalf of our members. Many of our members are IOCs and in the energy realm. And over the last couple of years, probably when the IEA released their net zero target, it really became apparent to energy organizations how much hydrogen is required to try and meet some of these net zero targets, especially in that 2050 plan. And since then, hydrogen has been at the forefront of many of the topics, and how are they going to develop the hydrogen industry.
And how would you say, just very quickly, Coleman, how among your members, and as you know, we talk to a lot of them at your CEO roundtable series as well. How are they taking on board this need to shift to new technology, this need to shift to spaces like hydrogen?
Well, if you see some of the large IOCs, you know, Total, for example, have changed their name to Total Energies. Even in Qatar, Qatar Petroleum to Qatar Energies. The energy companies are realizing that they have to diversify a lot from just the fossil fuel industry. They're looking obviously into renewables, and hydrogen is kind of very linked to previous and normal fossil fuels, as you will. So it's kind of a space where they feel that they probably would have some expertise.
All right, good. Coleman, thank you. David, let me come to you. You know, with that in mind, why are we seeing hydrogen projects struggling to gain traction?
I think what we need to remember is that hydrogen as an energy carrier is very new. So it's been around for industrial purposes for 100 years, 150 years, but the scale of what we need to achieve in order to manage the energy transformation is orders of magnitude greater. And so the industry is in the process of scaling up. And so it's inevitable, really, that there are some issues with getting bigger projects, financing bigger projects, finding the right skill sets, finding the right risk management mechanisms, right insurance companies. So there's a whole plethora of things, but it's really, you know, the birthing of a new industry. It's a very normal situation in a sense.
But give us a sense, though. I mean, without wanting to sound cynical, how long are we going to talk about it as the birthing of a new industry? Give us a sense of the time frame here.
So I've been in hydrogen for about 30 years, and for about 25 of those, it was very much, well, this is really interesting and we should do something, and let's get on with it. And really in the last 4 or 5 years, we have been getting on with it. So I think the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see very solid foundations being laid. Big projects are getting underway. So China is moving fast. NEOM, of course, in Saudi Arabia, moving very fast. Biggest project announced yet. And so we're I don't think we'll be talking about this for much longer. We can't afford to be talking about this for much longer. It will be something that happens very rapidly. And by 2030, I think we'll see multi-gigawatts of installed capacity in many different countries.
And Nimir, to bring you in here, before we get into the specifics, do you think this is a subject being discussed enough here in Dubai?
I guess so. It seems like the core focus is how we can really move to this zero emissions, and hydrogen is one of the most important topic that they have to look at. Now it all come to what will be the source of hydrogen, and this is a real challenge over here. That's I guess they mentioned it. That there is a lot of activities on it. We get used to have hydrogen, and still now in the United States, for example, more than 85% of the hydrogen is coming from natural gas. So, and still, despite all of the huge effort for the transformation to the green hydrogen, it is still less than 1%, 2% in order to come to the reality. So how we can really manage this transition. And now it's all about this color coding, how we could really work it out in a way that we facilitate it, so that we can guarantee that we are going towards the zero emissions. We have the affordability, as well as we have the infrastructure. And that's a real challenge that's a world currently is facing.
So let's pick that apart a little bit. So natural gas can compete as a source of hydrogen. What we've established that. What are the challenges in particular with green hydrogen?
The green hydrogen challenge is still natural gas. We are familiar with handling it, and specifically in infrastructure as LNG. The story of the LNG and the huge investment that's made on the transportation of LNG help actually natural gas to be a major source of hydrogen. Now we have to do the same in order to get to the green hydrogen and to it to be a source of a global energy.
And how when we talk about the world benefiting from the LNG experience in the transportation of hydrogen, how close are we to that? How much can be learned? How realistic is that?
Is still quite challenging. Physically, it's quite challenging. The methane, when we make it LNG, is a different animal from the hydrogen when we make it liquid and we transport it. The energy intensity is still extremely challenging. There is a learning curve that we have to do, but we have struggled the same when we have gone through the LNG, and we become aware of it successfully when we had a significant investment and collaborative investment that's really made it and facilitated to be globally move forward. Now we have to do the same for the liquid hydrogen, so that we can ease the process of making the infrastructure as well as the know-how, so that it can be the same story as the LNG success story.
Okay, David, on I mean, I guess taking a step back and with your 30 years experience in hydrogen, and we can talk about transportation, but let's just talk bigger picture first. What sort of technology breakthroughs from your perspective are still needed in this space?
At the risk of sounding over-optimistic, I don't think we need any technology breakthroughs. I think we've got the technology that works. We can certainly improve. We can make things more efficient. We can make them last longer. But electrolyzers have been functioning in industry in multi-megawatt packages for 100 years. We know how to do those. We know how to handle hydrogen in industrial settings, in refineries. What we don't know yet is how to join it all up in an energy setting, and how to do it in terms of, really making it cost effective and really making it efficient. So the EPC side, actually building big projects. So I think it's mostly now about putting projects in the ground, learning from them, accepting that they're not going to be perfect, but then driving the innovation cycle and getting revenue in, which will build it further. So I think the innovation is in the business models and in types of financing. It's much less in technology to get it going, and we will get better as we go. And
who would you hold up as best in class right now? Who's doing this well? What would you hold up as a model for others trying to do this?
So I think the companies that are in the best position are the ones where they've found effectively an end-to-end solution, where they have perhaps low-cost renewables well situated. You can build an electrolyzer on site and then use it. So there's a company called H2 Green Steel in Sweden, which is building a hydrogen production facility to put into steel making, to decarbonize that steel making. Companies like Fortescue. So they own mines, they own renewables, they own ships, they can do end-to-end management, and they also have very big balance sheets. So it's that kind of innovative company. And the others, there are almost everybody you can think of is playing in hydrogen at the moment. The energy majors, the renewables people, the component manufacturers, the auto industry. But I think the ones who are moving fastest are the ones who have that end-to-end kind of grasp.
Coleman, what about Qatar? As a context, as a realistic player in this space, how does it look there?
Well, Qatar do have a great opportunity here in the line of hydrogen, and obviously one, if not the biggest LNG provider in the world. LNG can easily be made, hydrogen can easily be made from LNG, and methanol also. That makes it easier to transport. But if the infrastructure is there and countries around the world are taking the natural gas, and the natural gas is then developed straight into hydrogen, well, that's the infrastructure that we need, and that's the infrastructure that Qatar can buy into.
But I guess, David, just to come back to you on this, when I asked you for best in class, is the willingness there in the Middle East among the LNG producers to make this happen fast in the hydrogen space? Is the willingness there, do you think?
So I think certainly in the Middle East, and obviously that's a diverse region. So we see an enormous amount happening in Saudi Arabia. This is very much a flagship part of NEOM, is the green hydrogen, green ammonia facility. We see a lot going on in the Emirates. We see a lot going on in Oman. They have their own hydrogen strategy. And Qatar, I think, is exceptionally well placed. I think perhaps Qatar is so well placed in natural gas that it hasn't had to push very hard on hydrogen so far.
Right.
But I would agree with Coleman. I think there's a great opportunity to produce hydrogen from methane, either in Qatar and ship liquid hydrogen, as you were saying, or some other form of hydrogen carrier, or by shipping methane and then converting it. Of course, it needs to be decarbonized. We need to take the carbon out and manage it, whether that's CO2 sequestration, whether that's utilization, whether methane pyrolysis, turning it into solid carbon. That's a really important part of the question.
And Nimir, of course, you're based in Qatar, Gas and Fuels Research Center at Texas A&M. How do you see progress where you are among the big players in Qatar? What are the biggest obstacles, would you say, and who should we look to as the most progressive in this space?
I guess that's an excellent question, and it's for us actually. We have a room for R&D, and that's our role as academia. So we have to be very creative, as indicated. That's methane at the source of hydrogen is the cheapest form compared to the currently cost for the green hydrogen and all of the existing processes. But methane, we have to really go very far in the decarbonization of the industry in order to make it competitive with the current needs. And here where we are really actively working. So as David indicated, the pyrolysis is the process, but as a Texas A&M, we came up with a nice technology that's called Cargin, and this Cargin that could be inserted in most of the gas processing plants, making CO2 and methane into carbon nanotube, as well as producing hydrogen. We claim that this hydrogen is a golden hydrogen. It even could be better because we are using CO2 in order to make it in the reforming technology. Inversion of such type of processes within the existing infrastructures could be the route of decarbonizing the natural gas industry. And countries like Qatar, and I'm also the director of the same center in the Texas A&M main campus in College Station in Texas. We are a main producer of state of Texas of natural gas. We really need to go far in these technologies. We need to invest on them. We need to scale them up, and we need to create the cluster of collaboration between academia, industry, as well as financing in order to move them and inserting them. If we really make many of those types of solutions, we could really transform the industry and still keep methane as the major source of hydrogen.
I'm glad you mentioned your role in the US as well. Who's paying for this in the US?
So we have different entities. In the US now, we have a huge investment from the government, NSF, as well as the Department of Energy. They have calls of projects in billions of dollars to decarbonize the industry and investing in renewable. So for many states, the United States is still dependent on fossil fuel to a larger extent. And as I indicated, more than 85% of the hydrogen in the US is coming from natural gas. So decarbonizing those sectors is a must now for the government, and it's well funded. Also in Qatar, now we have entities of research funding like Qatar National Research Fund and other entities, and the industry itself is now interested to fund those type of R&Ds, looking to the decarbonization of the natural gas industry as a source of, because gas is not only for hydrogen. The natural gas industry, for many of the chemicals infrastructure, that's a necessity for the world. It's not only fuels and hydrogen, I mean.
And you know, I apologize in advance, but with a news hat on, I've got to ask the political question here. You know, we talk about funding, and you clearly sound impressed with the funding available in the US. How difficult is the current skepticism in states like Texas, Republican states like Texas, towards these sorts of projects?
Yeah, I guess this is a very political type of question, since I'm a professor at Texas A&M, and Texas A&M is a state entity. By the way, we are not at like Rice University, where it's a private school. So I have to watch my language, but it seems like, yes, in the US, mostly it is influenced by the political scene. But now there is a general agreement towards cleaner energy. And by the way, in the state of Texas, we have major investment in renewable energy as well. A lot of people think that we do not have. We really have. We have a huge investment. And if you recall, a couple of years ago, when the winter came surprisingly to us, it created a lot of problems to us. Not from the fossil fuel source of energy, but in the renewable infrastructure that could not work at that winter. When it happened, the temperature goes very low. So, but now we are recognizing the need, actually, to go greener and greener, because it become a global demand. It's not a local demand. You cannot deal with it in terms of the state or even in terms of the United States. So you have to deal with the world, and that's an issue that's become well known and being recognized. So they will have to support it one way or another.
Okay.
But always you have to find the technology that have the economical incentives. That means also add value to the process, and also shows that they could be a longer survival for fossil fuel and specifically natural gas.
I apologize for asking the question. I thought you handled it beautifully diplomatically.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was very good. By the way, just very quickly, if there's anyone here, either of you want to join in the conversation, please feel free, to throw in a question. Coleman, I want to come back to, I mean, you talked about it very briefly about methanol earlier. And I want to talk about the use of either ammonia or methanol to be a carrier for hydrogen. What potential does this hold for GCC countries, and then specifically for Qatar?
Well, in Qatar, for many years now, they've been producing ammonia and methanol and transporting it all over the world. So the technology is already there. The expertise is there, especially in the transportation side. So if it was to be scaled up to assist in hydrogen production, Qatar are best placed to enter that realm. The problem I foresee is, because hydrogen is in its infancy and the hydrogen economy isn't yet been evolved, unless there's a demand there, countries like Qatar won't start seriously looking into it. You see in Qatar over the last 4 or 5 years with the North Field expansion, that's the concentration. If there was more of a demand for hydrogen, well, then obviously hydrogen would have to be on the table, as well as expanded the natural gas exploration. So I feel, unless the market starts dictating hydrogen is needed, I think Qatar will continue to keep a back seat.
Okay, David, what do you think specifically in relation to that? Qatar's role, but just the use of both ammonia and methanol.
So the majority of projects which are looking at producing large-scale hydrogen are looking at converting it to ammonia and shipping it that way. So that's what the NEOM project is doing. That's what a number of the European projects are doing, and projects which are starting to get underway in Africa, in Latin America, in other parts of the world. So it's very that there will be hydrogen carriers that are varied, and ammonia and methanol are two very good ones. I think specifically on Coleman's point, I think it's one I've heard several times. It's a really good point. You need to make the market. And what's happening now is we're starting to see countries like Japan saying, you know, we need to buy renewable ammonia or low carbon ammonia. We are prepared to talk about pricing, which will be slightly different from traditional ammonia. There are certification schemes underway. And there are also auction schemes like, for example, the German government's H2 Global, which is a dual auction where they both negotiate the offtake and the sale price, and they will subsidize both with a contract for difference. So it's a way of trying to create that market which doesn't yet exist, but it's starting to happen.
How excited? It's a bit of a shift, this, but how excited is the private sector getting getting about its involvement in this, and which parts of the private sector should we be looking at most? And I'm talking really from an investor perspective here, which is so critical.
So the fascinating thing, the thing I love about hydrogen is it touches everything. So almost any industrial company you can think of is involved in hydrogen in some way or another. Investors are particularly interested, governments are interested, there's a huge wave. So I think the private sector is extremely keen to understand. Some of them see it as a huge opportunity, some of them see it as an existential threat and want to understand, and some of them just want to supply into it. From an investor perspective, I mean, that's always a tough question. I think there are some technology companies who are going to do very well maybe in methane pyrolysis, maybe in electrolysis. There are logistics companies who are going to do very well. And otherwise, I think it's going to be the fast-moving, innovative, slightly risk-taking companies who are likely to do well.
As the investors.
They are the investors,
They are the investors.
And they are also getting investment.
I guess the reason, and Nimi, I will come to you in a second on this, given your startup and the entrepreneurial piece here. I'll be interested to hear from you. But I guess I asked the investor question because, you know, looking at a completely different space, I've done a lot on the issue of adaptation that should sit alongside mitigation and needs investment. And you know, I've spoken to a lot of financial services companies, some of the big banks who, and it's a horrible thing to have for them to have to admit, but some of them have been telling their analysts, you know, don't get involved in adaptation because there's no return on investment here. Or at least it's extremely hard. What is the selling point, that return on investment selling point to a bank, for example, now when it comes to hydrogen?
So there are several things, I guess, and the big banks are very involved in this. If you look at HSBC or Bank of America or, you know, name them, they all have teams who are looking at sustainable energy across the board and hydrogen specifically. And of course, they're interested in deal making. So there's lots of M&A activity, there's lots of financing going on. And if you step back a bit, as you were saying, they are very much looking at where their risks lie in terms of portfolio, in terms of exposure to carbon, and in terms of how they are going to be judged on ESG and similar ratings. So the banks are very keen to be able to offer that flexibility. And actually, in the background, a number of them are very keen to get out of high carbon business full stop. But they need to make a return, and that is still, you know, we will get there, but we're not there tomorrow.
You think the skepticism and the hesitancy is lessening?
I think it's going in waves, to be honest. You get different levels of understanding of the complexities of the market, and so some people will simply look at a stock going up and down and say, oh my God, it's all terrible, it's never going to work, or fantastic, let's pile in. And there are others who look at the longer term trends and the need for decarbonisation and the resource distribution and all sorts of other things, and they have a longer term investment perspective. And the returns are probably not going to be sort of oil and gas returns historically, because it's a different way of using a natural resource. But they are going to be solid, long-term, much less fluctuating returns, and that's interesting as well.
I'm sorry to dig further into this, and I'd be interested to hear, Nimi, from you as well. What's the sales pitch from a lot of these from a lot of these whether it's the entrepreneurial companies getting involved in this or other companies getting involved? What's their compelling sales pitch to the investor? Would you say in a sort of elevator pitch?
So very, very boiled up. It's we have to decarbonize. We're under enormous pressure. We can't decarbonize only with electricity and with one or two other things. We have to use hydrogen. We are the best in whatever thing in hydrogen you're looking at.
Okay.
That's the
okay. What about you? What's your pitch for it?
I guess it is all about how you can really open other markets, because in the hydrogen market, and specifically I guess David indicated the pyrolysis, our technology, the Cargin, is how we can decarbonize at the same time open new material market. This carbon material and the transformation of carbon material to take place in the electronic industry, as well as to take place in the rubber industry, and to take place in so many other infrastructure, in the cement industry, in the steel industry, depend on how you can provide a technology that can provide a cheaper hydrogen at the same time decarbonize. So it's all about what type of incentives that you can give to the market. What are other markets beside the hydrogen as a source of energy you can open? And the more markets you open, the more exciting will gonna be the banking and the finance system, as well as the investors. And that's what we are trying to do in our startup. And I guess Coleman indicated clearly that Qatar right now, yes, based on the natural gas, they have the ammonia, they have the methanol, but also Qatar now investing heavily in blue ammonia. That's getting it one steps towards opening the market for hydrogen carrier that might meet the demand in Japan needs for a greener hydrogen. But if you go further and you decarbonize it even further and then open the market for another material like carbon material, then you can really switch the whole focus on that area. And this is where, as entrepreneur, we are trying to find this niche market on how we can design a technology that can deal with the existing infrastructure and at the same time broaden the market that's behind the methane, behind the products like ammonia or methanol. You can make another products, and these products can really open a new markets. And this material transformation of conventional fossil fuel like natural gas into to become a major player in the material market through the pyrolysis or through our technology Cargin, that could be a game changer. If we have success in this direction and we can make it in the larger scale, and even in the modular scale, because if you go to the natural gas production, most of the emission came from the production sites. Most of the impact, the negative impact in terms of the carbon footprint, if you catch this in the thousands of the producer of gas in the United States, you can be a game changer. Now, I have been in a session before this one, and I received a similar question from Nigeria, that they have the same interest, whether we can have a modular technologies that can really help them to expand and to decarbonize, and at the same time produce hydrogen and produce natural gas products.
I'd be interested just to follow up on that. You know, with your entrepreneur's hat on, startup, what's the most important? And there are a lot of entrepreneurs here in Dubai, which is extremely refreshing to see. What's the most important thing for an entrepreneur and a startup to ensure they get a place at the table, or at least a crack at getting a place at the table? Now, is it simply a very promising technology, or is it an ability to be able to communicate their ideas really compellingly to the policymakers or the investors? What's most important?
It's actually all of what you stated. So to be successful, first of all, the compelling technology and the ability to scale it up. The finding the right industry partner who is really interested in taking it into the place. And then finally, yes, making it as a part of a transformation of the energy sector and the technology that existing. And here you touch the nerve of the policymaker. You have to make it a very nice story to tell, but this story cannot be told just because you want to tell them a story. You have to prove to them what impact it will gonna have, and then you have to go 2 steps ahead. You should not only tell them, hey, I have a technology and this technology can work and give you this product. What this product will gonna transform, how this will gonna add value to the chain of the process, and how this will gonna address all of your needs in terms of the decarbonization, in terms of moving towards greener products, etc. So when you touch all of those nerves, then you will gonna find someone to listen to you. But the main challenge is the financing. That's you really need to find someone to finance and to take the risk. So that's this technology, the earlier de-risking for us as a chemical engineers, for example, we say that the technology is starting in the lab. Then we make it bench scale. Then we make it pilot scale. And then finally we go to the commercial scale. In each one of these, there is an additional cost and more responsibility that's come in place. So you need to find this chain very clear and actually attractive for entrepreneur and scientists to go for it.
Yeah, really important. Thank you for that. And David, a sort of similar question to you with your consultancy hat on. What's the advice you give the smaller players, the newer players, who might well be the solution ultimately?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work at ERM with startups. We also do a lot of sort of M&A type of work. So we actually see the whole spectrum, and certainly for the startups, and I've actually sat on VC investment committees and other things. It's very much about, you know, understanding your market. It's about having a great technology, but also a great team. So you investors very often are focused on the team, and so you need to be able to tell the story convincingly and really understand where it is you play and where you should be avoiding. And it's about focus, because one of the things that startups often like to do is continue to invent. So they would like to develop more and make it better, and then they can add another percentage and then another tweak and then do this, and they never get to a point of actually selling something. So focus on the customer, focus on the product, and that's absolutely key.
All right. Look, I want to get some closing thoughts from all of you on this COP and where the hydrogen piece, you know, sits in this COP, and not just the hydrogen piece, but the hydrogen piece at the entrepreneur level as well. David Coleman, let me kick it off with you. I mean, we've all been in and out of sessions in the blue zone and the green zone. What's the and I look at this from a news perspective, but what's the sense you're getting from this COP now? And you know, we all heard Al Gore yesterday slam the presidency and the fossil fuel companies and the links between the presidency and the fossil fuel companies. What's the sense?
Obviously, you've been here yourself, Axel, for the last few days with the green zone here, so close to the blue zone this year in Dubai. There's a lot more private sector companies here. And going back to hydrogen, I think it's the private sector companies that we need to help evolve this hydrogen economy. So having them on site and interested in trying to make the real change with the politicians, with the negotiators, I think it's a nicer mix than we've seen in previous COPs.
And have you give us a sense of who you've met here? When you know, whether it's others like peers of yours with your startup hat on, and you know what has excited you most, and or perhaps you're disappointed by a lack of the entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know. Tell us what your thoughts are.
I guess there is a transformation in this COP meeting. That's there is a room for the first time. I see that there is a room for entrepreneurs, startup, and also there is a interest to provide resources for them, so that the resources are not going to be only for the big players. And in order to have any breakthrough in any process or in any promising route like the hydrogen as a route, you have to build the process from the source to the end user. And for the first time, I see that the people now understanding that it is not about only the technology and the source, but also about the market, how you really create that market, because whenever you create market, then the finance will gonna be interest, then the investment will gonna increase, because the producer will gonna find someone to take the market. That's the same route happening in the LNG story. The LNG story, that's you need all of those, all the chain to be there. And when all of the chain to be there, then the huge investment came to place, and then we have the breakthrough in the technology and in the process, and now it become a known and existing technology that's people using it. We need to have the same, and I notice in this COP meeting, there is this sense of you need all the players, and you need to provide all of them the room, and then also listen to them. And I guess that's a major transformation that we really need now to carry on the action items of these discussions, how it will be implemented. And if we really follow quick, then as David indicated, we can really make a breakthrough. The work in hydrogen is not new work. Now we have a huge interest and we have an opportunity. And it is, I always tell my student and those even entrepreneurs that who participated with me in the company, that it is like riding a wave. So when you ride a wave, you have to really see the momentum and do not lose the momentum. You may see it coming, and if you do not ride it in the right time, it will gonna be all on you. It will gonna come and go. So now we have the very real momentum that's coming to us. We all have to really ride this momentum before it dissipates. And then we could really make the breakthrough. The minute that we ride this wave, we can get where we are really targeting.
And just David, just to finish up with, then to continue that analogy, are there enough competent surfers to ride the wave? Yeah.
Well, I think there's a mix. There are some beginners. There are some people who are definitely very competent at riding the wave. There are one or two who have already fallen off and crashed out. But I think the analogy is exactly right. We've come from this very small industry, almost a cottage industry, apart from industrial gases, and we're now really growing at speed. The thing I think is great about this COP is actually the breadth and depth of hydrogen activities that are going on. So I was at a World Bank panel yesterday, which was about financing hydrogen, particularly in developing economies, and they're talking about tens of billions coming from the World Bank. I'm moderating a session tomorrow, which is about, we're doing some work with the Hydrogen Council and the WBCSD on embedding the SDGs in the hydrogen economy. So there's a whole framework about SDGs. I'm talking at a panel of the chemical industry, and then there's a whole day on hydrogen transition on Thursday, which I'm talking at. So there are hydrogen events everywhere. They are open to this enormous range of people, as I talked about, who are touched by the hydrogen economy. And I think, learning about it and spreading that has been a really important part of COP. I think it's been great.
Would you go so far, just to finish up with, would you go so far as to say you leave this COP, that you get a sense of a step change in the hydrogen space?
The presidency is embracing hydrogen. They are part of this SDG event on the 5th. So the presidency has really said hydrogen is a fundamental part of this transition, and there is definitely a sense that a step change. Yes, I think it really is a step change. I think we have to move faster. We have to unlock financing. We have to put the policy in place. Let's get on with it. That's the sense I get.
All right. Look, we're gonna finish it there. If anyone wants to raise anything, please do. Or are we good? That was a really super discussion. Thank you, and really good mix of views there. And it leaves. I don't know a great deal about the hydrogen space, not as much as you guys, but it leaves us certainly with some hope as we move through this COP and leave this COP. So, Coleman, thank you very much to you, David, to you as well, and to Nimir. Many thanks.
Shakzil,
thank you.